Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take a huge stack of sources, transcripts, campaign notes, videos, and, well, we try to distill them down to the critical insights that really matter.
And you've brought us into something pretty special today.
It's really unique. I mean, you think about most D&D campaigns, especially the ones that are played remotely, they just fizzle out.
Oh, absolutely. After a few months, you're lucky if you hit a dozen sessions. The friction of getting everyone together, the tech issues,
Yeah.
it's a campaign killer.
It really is. And that's what makes this campaign, the one about the Red Gold Company, such an anomaly.
A huge anomaly. We're looking at a wildly successful long-haul campaign that kicked off online right in the middle of 2020, and it is still going strong 5 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, over 70 sessions logged, and that's something like, nearly 500 hours of a shared story.
And they've only just hit 12th level.
Exactly. That slow progression level 1 to 12 over half a decade, that tells you everything you need to know about the style of play here. It's about depth.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're trying to reverse engineer their success. We're going deep into the transcript and the video of session 1. The very first, 5 to 7 hours?
That's right. To really understand the choices, the precise choices made by the DM and by the players that planted the seeds for this incredible longevity.
And they did this despite all the built-in chaos of playing on Zoom.
Right. So the big question we need to answer for you is, what foundational elements were so solid in those first few hours that they just powered through all the technical hurdles, kept this group of friends together, and sustained a meaningful adventure for years?
It can't just be a good story hook.
No, it's more than that. It's about building a campaign structure that, respects the player's time and commitment.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I think we have to start with the contract, the thing that literally bound them all together.
Yeah, that's the first thing that jumps out from the Knights. The DM, he just completely skips the often awkward session 0 problem.
The whole "why are we all here" trope.
Exactly. You all meet in a tavern or a shadowy figure hires you. It's a flimsy bond at best. This campaign just sidesteps that entirely. It goes for mandatory cohesion right out of the gate.
So the sources make it explicit. The party, the Red Gold Company, they're assembled not because they have some shared ambition or a common faith or even a shared enemy.
None of that.
It says they are brought together out of military obligation.
And that is an incredibly strong binding agent. It's a game changer.
So why is that initial compulsion, that lack of choice?
Right.
Why is that so critical for long-term play, especially when you're all remote?
Well, it removes the biggest existential risk to any campaign. It stops the player from saying, my character wouldn't stick around for this, or I really don't like the cleric's attitude, I'm leaving.
Right, that can just derail everything.
It can, but when you have a contractual or a military obligation, all that friction between characters, it just becomes narrative tension. It's not campaign-ending drama.
So they have to figure it out.
They have to. They have to figure out how to work together because some guy named Vice Admiral Jap Hendrick told them so. It's really brilliant DMing because it externalizes the why of the party.
And that lets the players just focus on the how.
Precisely. And the mechanism for this isn't some, vague handshake deal. We have the actual document in the notes. The letter of Marchian reprisal.
Which immediately lends this air of realism and seriousness to the whole situation. They're not just adventurers, they're state-sponsored privateers for the Queendom of Swordaland.
That legal status is everything. It defines their role in the world from minute 1. The letter explicitly authorizes them to seize ships, vehicles, and goods.
But only if they're connected to, unauthorized war efforts or spies.
Right, or any kind of anti-government action. So they have this legal, state-sanctioned cover to be aggressive. And that immediately elevates what they're doing as level 1 characters, beyond just, fighting some bandits in the woods. They have jurisdiction.
But hold on, doesn't that create a huge problem for them down the line? I mean, if they have legal cover, they also have legal accountability.
Yes.
The Vice Admiral is basically setting them up. They're the perfect scapegoats if anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
They're completely expendable.
Absolutely. And that tension, that's the engine for longevity right there. You have this freedom of action, but it's constrained by this extreme accountability. The DM then reinforces this whole structure by appointing one of the players as the liaison officer.
Corporal Yrsa Bjornstadter.
Yeah.
The human cleric, former combat medic.
Yeah. And that's such a clever, low-friction way to establish leadership.
They didn't have to argue about who's in charge or vote on a captain?
Nope. The government did it for them. And they picked the character who, on paper, seems the most disciplined and organized for the role.
It's a really smart move.
It ensures that even the most, let's say, chaotic player, and we're definitely looking at Wang Hongwen, Goblin Rogue.
The one who immediately jokes about his swashbuckling being wealth redistribution?
That's the one. It ensures that even he has a tether to institutional authority through Yrsa. She's responsible for the reports. She's responsible for the mission parameters. She's the one who has to report back to the Admiral.
So it forces the party, as a whole, to think about the political consequences of what they're doing from the very first minute.
Which is crucial when you know this game is going to last for 5 years. They can't just loot and pillage. They have to be able to justify their actions under the terms of the letter of marque.
Okay, so they have this incredibly solid political and legal structure holding them together. But let's give it, because the world building here is where the DM really shows a commitment to deep immersion.
Oh, yeah. This goes way beyond standard fantasy stuff.
The setting is Sparta, and it's a tidal-locked moon orbiting a warm gas giant.
Which results in a 60-hour day-night cycle.
A 60-hour day. Okay, let's unpack that, because that is a wild choice.
It is, and I have to pause here because that's the kind of world-building decision that either makes a campaign completely collapse under its own weight.
Or it instantly hooks every single player.
It hooks them. Because if you change something as fundamental as the passage of time, you change literally everything. This isn't just flavor text, it's physics, and physics affects logistics.
So how does that actually work for the players in practice? I mean, they can't just sleep for 8 hours and then go shopping for the next 16.
Right, so the sources explain that the 60 hours are split into 3 20-hour segments. And critically, there's a 2-hour eclipse that happens during the second segment of daylight.
Just imagine trying to schedule anything. A standard work week is just, it's structurally impossible.
And the logistical ripples are staggering. If you're on a time-sensitive mission, is a day 24 hours or is it 60? How does a spell that lasts for 24 hours even work in this world?
What about a long rest? If it's still 8 hours, the relative speed of your recovery versus how fast the world is moving around you is totally warped.
It is. And it forces instant player buy-in. Because if you don't buy into the 60-hour cycle, you just don't buy into the world.
The DM detailed how this affects daily life. They mentioned mandatory siestas during the longest bright segment.
To avoid the heat, I imagine.
Probably. But most importantly, it completely reshapes the economy.
Okay, tell me more about that, because this feels like an aha moment in world design for any aspiring DM who might be listening.
Well, think about a big marketplace, like in the city of Fort Mouth. It has to stay open for the full 60 hours.
Right.
But no single person, no single race can work that long.
So the workforce has to operate in shifts.
Exactly. And the shifts are based on the light cycle. Humans and halflings who prefer your standard daylight, they work the bright segments. But then the elves and the dwarves, with their superior low-light vision, they take over during that 2-hour eclipse and during the bright night.
The bright night. That's when the gas giant is illuminating the sky. That's it. So if the Red Gold Company wants to buy, say, specialized dwarven metalwork, they might have to wait until the elves and dwarves are awake and working during the bright night cycle.
But if they want fresh, human-harvested produce, they've got to wait for the standard daylight hours.
Exactly right. The physics of the setting dictates commerce, it dictates social interaction, it even dictates what kind of equipment is available at any given time.
It shows such a high level of pre-session prep. The internal consistency is just there from the start.
And it signals to the players that this world is robust, it's complex, and it's going to require a high commitment to immersion. This kind of detail, it rewards the players who care about lore and physics. It sets the tone for a serious, long-running game, not just a quick hack and slash.
And that structural complexity carries right over into the political landscape, doesn't it?
It does. The Red Gold Company, they're stationed in this contested area, the Wimronda area, and their task is to settle down the borders and discourage gangster-type control.
Which sounds like a pretty honorable mission on the surface.
On the surface, yes, but you have to look closer at their employer. The Queendom of Svartalfheim is explicitly labeled as lawful neutral.
And that is such a crucial distinction.
It's everything. This isn't a good king fighting an evil emperor. This is a power that is conquering others because they feel they have rights to do so. They're an imperialist power. But they are absolutely rigid about their own rules and their own laws.
Which immediately complicates the entire moral landscape for the players. If their employer was lawful evil, they'd know they're the bad guys. If they were chaotic good, they'd be rebels.
But lawful neutral, That means they're working for the cause of order, but that order might be deeply, deeply unjust to the people they're conquering.
So the DM has just set the stage for these profound ethical conflicts that are going to sustain this campaign for way longer than a simple monster hunt ever could.
And the party's role in this is to conduct the granularity stuff.
The dirty work.
The dirty work, the things the main army can't be seen doing. We're talking police actions, seizing assets, dealing with local leaders who resist Svartalland's new jurisdiction.
So their very first actions, before they even swing a sword, are going to force them to choose between their own personal morality and their contract with this entitled imperial power.
Exactly. What happens if they find evidence that a so-called gangster is only stealing food because Svartalland's occupation has ruined the local harvest?
The letter of marque demands they seize the goods and punish the gangster.
Right. They are essentially forced to be complicit in the expansion of a maybe unjust regime just because they sign a contract. That ambiguity, that space between lawful and good, it requires critical thinking from the players every single session.
It ensures that 5 years from now, this campaign isn't just about getting more powerful. It's about navigating the moral decay of their political obligations.
And it gives them license, you see. They can use the rules to be ruthless without being evil. If they can legally justify seizing a ship that belongs to a local lord, they can do it. The law is their shield.
Which is such a sophisticated hook for a long-haul campaign. Okay, so we've got the world, we've got the premise. But none of that matters if the player chemistry isn't there.
Not a bit. And the fact that this group endured 5 years of remote play with all its frustrations, that tells us everything about their bond. We have to look at their character choices as sort of windows into the player personas.
All right, let's do a kind of casting call. Who are these people? Let's start with the one who was immediately saddled with the most responsibility. The liaison officer.
Okay, so that's Yrsa Bjornsdottir, the human cleric. She's a former corporal and combat medic, and a cleric of the sun goddess Frihet. Her whole persona is just duty and structure.
So what's your speculation on the player behind Yrsa?
I think this is the responsible friend in the group. You know, the one. The person who probably manages the scheduling, takes the notes, the one who appreciates order. They gravitate toward a healer or support role because their fun comes from ensuring everyone else succeeds.
So they're comfortable being the stern, quasi-political lead who has to enforce the contract.
Exactly. And then you have her immediate counterpoint, the rogue.
Wang Hongwen, who is a Puchge, which is this world's version of a goblin, a swashbuckler.
And his bio, it's just perfect. He's an expert at wealth redistribution and a freedom fighter.
So the player.
This is the witty, playful friend, the one who uses disruptive humor to challenge the status quo. And in this campaign, the status quo is Yrsa's authority.
That wealth redistribution joke is the first thing he says.
It is. And it shows he knows his character's role is to inject a bit of chaos, to question that lawful neutral premise, but always in a way that's entertaining, not destructive. He's the necessary lubricant that keeps a serious plot from getting too dry.
Okay, then we've got the social glue, Stroop.
Stroop Barent, the halfling bard. He's from a far-off land, and the first thing he wants to do is form a 3-man band.
What does that say about the player?
To me, that's the enthusiast, the socially focused friend. He's the extrovert, the one who is going to initiate conversations with NPCs, he's going to handle the social checks, and he's going to try to keep everyone's spirits high.
Yeah, and the transcript notes, he's the player who had to step away for a bio break, but the group just patiently waited.
Which shows how vital his role as the social center of the group really is. They need him there.
Okay, let's shift to the more utility and observation-focused characters.
Right, so we have Kim van Lila. She's a Wood Elf Ranger, Beastmaster subclass, the Scout. Plays an interesting flute, and her very first recorded line is, "I think you're all very cool."
Very sweet. What's your read on the player?
I think this is the kind, supportive, and highly observant friend. She's focused heavily on utility. She immediately starts talking about her owl familiar's purpose for scouting, and the notes highlight her high perception score. She's not trying to grab the spotlight, she's looking for the most efficient and helpful way to contribute.
Which makes her invaluable for a long-term team.
Absolutely. And then you have the silent but deadly presence.
Segon Satori, the Wood Elf monk, from a temple on a cliff face, doing mandatory service, just over 100 years old.
This player, I think, is the focused, quiet friend. Probably a very methodical, detail-oriented person who is quiet during all the social banter, but then delivers extreme competence when it's time for action.
And we see that immediately, right? The moment combat starts, He's the first one to dash into the fray.
He provides that kinetic energy, that martial competence. And finally, you have the bookworm.
Timidor Ronehelli, the High Elf Wizard, a former sage.
Yeah, the player here is the information-dense friend. This is the person who loves the lore, the history, the arcane rules. He's the one who's going to be making all the arcana and history checks, making sure the party understands why a cult is using these specific symbols or what the 60-hour day implies politically. He's the external brainpower for planning.
You know, what's fascinating when you lay them all out like that is the balance.
It's a perfect party composition.
It is. They didn't start with 5 fighters and a rogue. They have 2 strong utility casters in the cleric and wizard, 2 information and combat scouts with the ranger and rogue, a pure martial artist in the monk, and the social core with the bard.
It's a mature, balanced party right from the gate, and that is a significant factor in their long-term sustainability. They cover every necessary proficiency.
Okay, but now we have to talk about the reality of remote D&D, especially back in 2020. The video and transcript show. Well, it was a technical mess.
It was a disaster, technically speaking. The DM is losing his mouse pointer on the virtual tabletop multiple times. Because of latency, people are constantly talking over each other. There's a point where a player is muted and keeps talking for a while before anyone notices.
And we already mentioned the player who had to leave for a bio break right in the middle of a dialogue scene.
And let's not forget the climax of all the non-D&D chaos. One of the players, it's Bibbs, who plays Stroop the Bard. She loses her engagement diamond.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
And she has to pause the entire game to search for it, asking everyone for advice on how to check the sync trap. In a professional setting or with a group of strangers, this is a disaster.
The game just ends there.
It ends. But in this group, it was a moment of bonding. And this is the single most important lesson for longevity you can take from this. If this were a group of strangers, Session 1 would have ended in frustrated silence or just been abandoned.
Instead, what do?
They use every single technical glitch and every interruption as a launching pad for organic, established in-jokes.
Like the reference to astrophysicists, I tell you, when the DM is struggling with the VTT indexing.
Or the immediate question of, where's Jack Sparrow when you need him, right before the skeletons appear on the boat? They value the camaraderie more than the perfect execution of a combat round.
They trust each other.
That's the word. They fill the dead air with warmth, joking about the lost diamond, offering genuine support and advice. This low-friction role-playing is paramount. The interruptions are just normalized because the DM and the players know the shared story will continue once the interruption is handled.
So the game is robust enough to stop for a real-life event.
And that respect for the players as people is what keeps them coming back for 5 years. They trust the DM to wait for them, and they trust that when they come back, the other players haven't just derailed the plot without them. That high social trust completely compensates for the low technical stability of the remote setup. That's the secret sauce.
Before the adventure really kicks off, there's another bit of setup from the DM that seems really important. He spends a lot of time just meticulously listing everyone's proficiencies and their passive perception scores.
Yeah, on the surface it seems like dry mechanical inventory, but it's actually a brilliant strategy, especially for remote play.
It sets an expectation for proactive role-playing, right? Why is passive perception so critical here? Keim's score is a 16, which is very high for level 1. Why emphasize that instead of just having her roll a check?
Because in a remote environment, every single dice roll slows the game down. You have to roll, wait for the result, report it. It just breaks the narrative flow. Passive checks, especially passive perception, allow the DM to simply narrate information directly to the player who has the skill.
So Keim, the ranger, is immediately placed at the bow of the ship. She becomes the designated eyes of the party just because of her passive score.
It delegates responsibility. Instead of the DM having to constantly ask 6 different players to roll perception, he just looks at Keim 16 and says, Keim, here's what you see.
And the same thing applies to proficiencies like history and arcana.
Absolutely. By confirming that Timidor, the wizard, has history proficiency, the DM knows that when some ancient symbol is mentioned, he can address Timidor directly. Timidor, you recognize this symbol as belonging to the first age of the Svartalfheim hegemony.
It streamlines the game. It focuses the delivery of knowledge only to the domain experts in the party.
And that focus on utility ensures that every player feels their character is contributing in a meaningful way, which is vital for preventing people from feeling marginalized during long remote sessions.
Okay, so all the foundations are laid. the lawful neutral structure, the crazy 60-hour day, this highly organized and trusting party. Now it's time for the action to start. And their first mission is designed to look utterly mundane.
Deceptively mundane. The initial task is to transport supplies, coal, oil, food on their ship, the longship Mirpard. They're also towing a smaller boat called the Nar.
And they're just dropping supplies off at 4 different lighthouses in the Lenore Strait. It's a delivery job.
It's designed to give them time to roleplay and just get used to the setting and each other's characters, but the tension builds really quickly, and it builds because of player initiative.
Wang, the Goblin Rogue, immediately uses a perception check to eavesdrop.
Of course he does, and he overhears the ship's captain shouting about some food being stolen. This introduces the first layer of complexity right away. Is the threat internal, or is it external?
The Red Gold Company was hired to ensure order, and there might be a thief right there in their own ranks.
And at the same time, Kime, the ranger, our designated spotter, uses her owl familiar to scout ahead. The owl reports seeing the expected supply wagons at the lighthouse, but also something unexpected.
2 small humanoids and a dog or a wolf.
This is excellent DM technique. You've got the external threat, the potential bandits, paired immediately with this internal moral tension of the stolen food. The players aren't allowed to assume the threat is simple.
And it immediately rewards the players who invested in those skills. Wang with his street smarts and Kime with her scouting utility, they are actively shaping the narrative before the first hostile die is even rolled.
The attack happens at the 3rd lighthouse stop, and the sequence of events here just escalates the stakes exponentially.
The initial threat is pretty standard D&D stuff. A goblin named Brick and his companion, they throw a flaming oil grenade, basically a Molotov cocktail, to block the path of the wagon that's leaving.
Right, but that's the distraction.
That's the distraction. The real threat is the mutiny. I mean, the most chilling part of this transcript is the reveal that 2 clerics, Farwindo Mizo and Curate Ben Stiga, who were traveling as pilgrims, as passengers, they're the actual villains.
It's a perfect betrayal. One cleric just opens up a crate, which was supposed to be cargo, and out of it he raises 3 skeletons. Instant necromancy on the deck of a ship.
And the other cleric shows remarkable tactical intelligence. He uses a crowbar as a focus and casts Thunderwave.
And that Thunderwave spell in this specific scenario is absolutely devastating.
It's not just the damage.
It's the shove. It immediately knocks the halfling bard, Stroop, and most of the non-combatant crew members unconscious and overboard into the water.
So it instantly neutralizes the party's social support and all their NPC allies. It completely isolates the core party members who are left standing on the deck.
The stakes just went from 0 to 100 in a single round of combat.
And this immediately pivots the entire campaign. This isn't a military escort mission anymore.
No, this is now confronting an organized, high-level necromantic cult. This betrayal is a massive hook for Session 1, and it retroactively justifies Yrsa's backstory. Remember, she was established as a cleric who had a previous bad encounter with a cult.
So the threat is now deeply personalized. They weren't just ambushed by random bandits. They were specifically targeted by sophisticated, disguised enemies.
And think about the message the DM is sending to the players. You can't trust anyone, not even people traveling under the guise of piety.
Okay, so despite this rapid escalation and the simultaneous technical chaos of playing on Zoom, the Red Gold Company reacts with incredible speed and coordination.
They're not a haphazard group. This is a tactical team.
So let's break down that first round of action, because it really highlights the player's mastery of the rules.
Okay, so Sagan, the monk, he acts first. He uses his superior movement and his dashing action to close the distance immediately toward the goblins who are still on the shore. He prioritizes removing the ranged threat. Smart move.
Meanwhile, Timidor, the wizard, recognizes the perfect crowd control opportunity and casts Sleep.
The classic level 1 I win button.
Exactly. And he targets the 2 goblins and their dog, or wolf, ensuring they're instantly taken out of the fight without wasting any damage spells.
Which is expert tactical prioritization. This leaves only the heavily armored magical threats on the boat, the 2 necromantic clerics, and the 3 skeletons.
And then we get this specific niche rules detail that rewards knowledgeable players.
The group very quickly realizes that skeletons have vulnerability to bludgeoning damage. They take double damage.
This single rule detail instantly changes the power dynamic of the entire fight.
It does. The monk, Sagan, who uses his unarmed strikes, which are bludgeoning damage, he becomes the ultimate skeleton executioner. Timidor, the wizard, who is probably just carrying a simple quarterstaff, suddenly becomes a crucial frontline combatant against the undead.
It's a perfect cinematic moment. Even the friendly NPCs, the captain and the first mate, they catch on and start using their heavy belaying pins
Which are basically clubs, bludgeoning
to
weapons.
smash the skeletons. So the DM rewards the players for actually knowing the minutia of the monster manual stat blocks.
And the fight, which was strategically devastating at the start, becomes quickly manageable because the players applied their specific class and monster knowledge.
And then you have the final great mystery, the signature of a campaign that knows how to hook you for 5 years. When Wang's sneak attack, which is also a critical hit, takes down the second cleric.
A misty sort of entity with bright eyes crawls out of his body and just fades away.
What is that?
Who knows? But it ensures the confrontation is not resolved. It's an immediate promise that the root of this necromantic threat, whether it's a possessive shade or a demon or something else, has escaped and will be back later. It turns the defeat of 2 low-level cultists into a high-stakes investigation.
So the combat ends decisively, but the overarching mystery begins with that ghostly escape.
Exactly. So the combat's over, the allies are stabilized, the adrenaline is fading. And how the Red Gold Company handles this aftermath is crucial. It really sets the tone for their operational effectiveness over the next 5 years.
The counting is meticulous, which again speaks to the organized nature of this group.
Yep. 1 goblin companion is dead. Both clerics are dead. 1 died so fast that Yrsa couldn't even manage to spare the dying on him. The initial goblin, Brick, is captured alive.
And Kime has successfully harvested a wolf belt.
A practical ranger. Now, the loot breakdown is interesting. 12 platinum, 24 gold, 48 silver, and 120 copper.
Now, I have to push back a little here. Just listing numbers can feel a bit dry. What's the real implication of this specific wealth division?
The implication isn't the total value, it's the process. Wang the rogue, he immediately takes point on inventorying everything. But the entire group demonstrates they have this established system of communal and fair sharing. The money is divided quickly and equitably.
And the specialized items. The goblin-sized armor and the silver sling bullets.
They're immediately discussed openly. Who can use this? How does this help the party? There's no discussion of selling them until everyone's had a chance to claim them.
So this is just more evidence that their established friendship has a high level of trust when it comes to resources.
And nothing derails a campaign faster or causes more real-life player friction than arguments over treasure, especially low-level magic items.
Their ability to just do a rapid, fair distribution of loot reinforces their bond and their focus on collective utility.
They're focused on the mission and the story, not on individual gain. And that collaborative mindset, which is evident from the very first loot split, is a huge predictor of campaign longevity.
Okay, so they arrive at the outpost town of Kustad, and the campaign pivots dramatically.
Massively. Commander Holt is waiting for them. He signs their letter of marque, which legitimizes their actions against the cultists, and he takes custody of the captured goblin, Brick.
And then Holt's subsequent instructions become their new core mandate.
He warns them to avoid public disputes and, critically, to cover it up if they have to harm any citizens.
They're not military police, they're deniable assets.
Exactly. And then comes the actual assignment. It's accompanied by a literal economic stimulus. Holt hands them a substantial bag of cash, which divides up perfectly 2 platinum, 4 gold, 8 silver, and 20 copper pieces for each of them. So what's the catch?
What is the catch?
The catch is the mission itself. Holt tells them to be travelers and look around and pay attention to what you see. He wants them to spend and spread that money all around Kustad to serve as civilian cover.
So the campaign has just officially shifted. They're no longer a military escort.
No, they are now an undercover espionage and intelligence gathering unit.
That is a brilliant design choice for low-level party. I mean, level 1 characters are so fragile, they're poorly equipped for frontline warfare, especially against necromancers.
But they are perfectly equipped for espionage. They can use their high mental proficiencies and social skills, Wang's street smarts, Stroop's performance, Timidor's knowledge.
It forces them to use their utility skills, not just their weapons. The money is literally their cover story. They're just wealthy travelers spending freely, not soldiers on a secret mission.
And this pivot ensures the players have to engage with that rich geopolitical context we talked about earlier. They have to talk to shopkeepers, gather rumors, look for subtle signs of cult activity in this newly acquired imperial territory.
The moment they're set free in Kustad, we see the players immediately investing in their characters and trying to integrate into the setting.
They buy essentials, sure, like healer's kits, but they also buy character items. Sagan, the monk, gets a long-desired used pan flute.
That's deep player investment. Sagong getting that flute is just a small moment of joy that cements his character's personality.
And immediately, Stroop, the bard, volunteers to join the monks' nascent three-man band. They're building their collective identity, their shared downtime activities. That's vital for a long-term campaign where the main plot might slow down for a while.
But the most important structural element for 5 years of slow progression is introduced right here, the concept of training.
Yes. The DM informs the party that to gain the 300 XP they need to reach level 2, it's not automatic. It requires spending both time, 10 days, and money 20 gold on training and finding mentors.
Which grounds their progression in the world. It explains why they are only level 12 after 5 years and 70 sessions. Leveling up isn't instantaneous.
Ursa has to find a mentor at the local mission. Wang has to find a discreet trainer in the criminal underworld.
This mechanic forces them to form deep, meaningful, and potentially very complicated relationships with the local NPCs.
They can't just leave Kustat after 2 sessions. They are now tethered to the city by their need to level up and find training resources. It actively prevents the murder hobo tendency and forces local investment.
And those NPCs, the mentors and trainers, they become the sources of intelligence. They become potential plot hooks, and the people the Red Gold Company might have to protect.
Or potentially betray when their lawful neutral contract conflicts with their personal loyalties.
And the session ends with a perfect, personalized teaser. It guarantees the rogue's attention for the next session.
Wang finds a short sword in a shop called the Fighting Edge, and it glows when he, the goblin, approaches it.
It's the ultimate personal plot hook. It's the Sting equivalent, the sword that detects goblins, but in this case, it's reacting directly to Wang himself.
It's an instant side quest, a personal mystery tied directly to his race and his character background. The session ends not with a clear victory or a new mission, but with this pivot toward high-stakes espionage and deeply personal mysteries, guaranteeing the players are going to connect for Session 2.
You know, analyzing Session 1 of the Red Gold Company campaign, it's like looking at a meticulously engineered blueprint for success.
It really is.
The longevity of this remote game seems to be rooted in 3 critical components. First, a highly detailed, internally consistent world structure, that lawful neutral political setup, and their radical 60-hour day.
Second, a mandatory initial group bond through the Letter of Marque, which successfully converted character friction into narrative tension.
And third, a player group dynamic that is just defined by high trust and camaraderie, which allowed them to overcome the constant technical chaos of playing on Zoom.
And you can't overlook the DM's design choices, that slow, meaningful progression tied to mandatory training, and the immediate pivot from fragile level 1 military skirmishes to high-stakes espionage.
It ensured that every character's specific utility, from the rogue's street smarts to the wizard's book smarts, was immediately essential.
They weren't playing soldiers, they were playing spies.
And given that dramatic betrayal by the clerics, who were just passengers, and that mysterious, misty entity that escaped, it's clear the Red Gold Company is facing a hidden foe. A foe embedded deep within Svartaland's supposedly orderly, lawful, neutral institutions.
This implies a massive internal power struggle is brewing.
Which brings us to our final thought.
Right. Commander Holt mentioned that the captured goblin, Brick, said he was hired by 2 women in a town called Lugna, which is a known den of pirates near the Knife Coast.
So this raises an important question for you, the learner, to think about.
If these necromantic cultists are embedded high up in Svartaland's institutions, and they are using pirates and common criminals as their ground operatives, what powerful, mutually beneficial secret alliance, or perhaps coercion, has been formed between those high-ranking cultists and the pirate network?
What is the cult gaining by using the criminal underworld?
And what devastating secret do the women of Lugna possess that connects the underworld threat directly to the heart of the queendom? That's the puzzle that will likely keep the Red Gold Company busy for years to come.
Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive.